Hello and welcome to another episode of Story of a Storyteller. And my guest today is Lali Love. Sorry, Lali, I said it wrong. After
You
all our
said it
talk,
perfectly. No, it's perfect. Hello.
how
Nice
are you
to,
doing?
I'm excellent, Connor. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your
Not at
podcast.
all. It's a joy. Lali is the author of three books: Heart of a Warrior Angel, From Darkness to Light, The Decoding of Joe, and The Joy of IT, which is not about computers, as my boyfriend was very upset to find out. It's The Joy of Infinite Transcendence. And we'll be talking about all those and about your poetry on YouTube and all of that kind of stuff later, Lali. But the first question I have is, what was little Lali like growing up?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Thank you. I just want to maybe just start off also saying, Connor, it's an honor to connect with you from Canada, where I live, all the way in Ireland.
Thank
And may
you.
I just say, just for full disclosure, I totally love your accent. And, and I can't wait to be able to travel to your beautiful country, hopefully in the near future, sometime soon when all this pandemic is
Oh,
behind us, right?
I think we
So
all. What's funny is I think once airports are clear and we're all fit to go, no one's going to be in their home country. So people are going to be going across to visit their friends, and they're going to be like, "No, I'm already gone. I'm somewhere
that's right.
else."
It'll be the new roaring 2020s in a whole
Yes,
different way, right?
exactly, exactly.
Okay, so what was Little Lally like? Well, that's going back a few years. But my earliest recollection of my childhood is probably around age 5. I have always been an introvert and loved getting lost in the magical realms of transformative books, even at an early age. As the eldest daughter of 4 kids, we lived a very modest life. So my parents worked very long hours to make ends meet, and we all contributed. I learned the principles of hard work from a young age. I didn't have much of a social life during my childhood. I remember being shy and sensitive and a quiet child. I have had lots of responsibilities handed to me from the ages of 5 and up. So as a result, I think little Lally was very brave and strong and devoted and extremely protective of her family. Also, I have always been very intuitive with the ability to feel deeply and pick up on other people's aura. I guess in some ways I'm still that introverted little shy girl. It's good to celebrate our inner child, though. So thanks for this question,
Uh,
Connor.
Not at all.
Mhm.
I'm the eldest as well, but there's only the two of us. But I think you said something that a lot of people have a similar experience of, that the eldest is always I don't want to say burdened with things, but they're always there's always a little bit more expected because they're the eldest.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, it's
Um,
more responsibility, right? Because they're
yeah,
paving the way.
yeah,
And from a parental perspective, as I have kids of my own, 2 beautiful daughters, I understand because as a parent, it's your first time raising a child. So, for me, I was very protective, and I sort of put her in a bubble, which isn't the best thing, right? You have to
well,
let
hang
them.
on. Now it's the best thing in
True.
our
We
pandemic times.
literally,
Yeah,
yes, literally, we're in a bubble. But I understand there's a lot of uh, not pressure, but responsibility on the eldest, because I think both parents and the child are learning. They're learning how to cope and grow together, right?
yeah. That's a really good point. Um,
Yeah.
like, you're an award-winning author of three
Mm.
books. You have poems on YouTube. You're a huge and a very positive influence on Twitter with the writing community and stuff like that. So it kind of seems from the outside looking on that you've always been destined for writing and for storytelling. Would you agree with that? Do you think it's always something you wanted to do, or is it something that you discovered along the way?
Oh, absolutely. I feel very blessed and grateful for these literary accomplishments, honestly, since I published my book in 2019. I guess I have always loved the creative process of storytelling. It's much like our journey in life, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah, just like this podcast. We have beginning, middle.
Exactly.
I don't like
You
saying
like that
end.
metaphor?
I did. I always say to be continued, though.
We always continue. Absolutely.
Yeah.
From my perspective, we are constantly narrating our own reality through our beliefs and thought patterns. So, writing has been a passion for me as it flows naturally from this artistic creative space within when I am aligned and my inner peace has not been moved. But even in my career as a business transformation architect for the public service, which is my daytime job, I've always excelled at writing briefings and strategy papers. I never thought I would become a published writer until about 6 years ago when I had a strong calling to write my debut novel, Heart of a Warrior Angel. It was this like a knowing that is difficult to articulate. It came from a very spiritual place, but the desire and the pull was very strong to shine the light on this particular storyline with themes of self actualization, overcoming childhood trauma, with shadow work, healing and transformation through the powerful alchemy of forgiveness and self love. So, my intention behind all my books is really to empower, inspire, and entertain. One
Very
thing
good.
people, yeah, one thing people don't know about me is that I actually bless my manuscripts before I publish each title. As I
Wow.
co-create with the universe, I always pray that the book ignites each reader's recognition of their own truth and from a sacred heart space with integrity and the loving remembrance of the most powerful force within the unified field, which I called divinity.
Okay.
So for me, the art of storytelling is an extremely powerful tool as they can seed the reader's mind for an everlasting impression.
Wow. Um, your questions are. Oh, sorry. There goes
Oh.
the dog. I think you're blowing her mind as well. Uh,
Well, please do her, definitely.
it's
She's
not.
loving it. She's loving it.
She is. I'm going to actually skip ahead to a question because I think it's the most important question of this interview for me to learn from you because that's one thing I don't think I speak about often enough. Like one of my main drives for creating this podcast is like there's lots of little things, but kind of one of the biggest things was to learn from other authors at all the different points in the journey. Like that's why I interview people that haven't been published at all, and then I interview people who have like I actually interviewed someone that had over 40 books.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? So like I try to get people.
That's incredible.
I know it's some say incredible, some say insane.
I have so much respect.
I
sure.
know I'm the same. But one question I have is like, I'm sure anybody listening and watching on YouTube will agree that you seem to have a very strong spirituality, and even without talking to you, that came across in when I was doing my research and looking at your different books and the themes behind them all. So, what to you is spirituality?
That's a very good question because I think this is a very personal question, as everyone,
Defines it
I
differently.
think defines spirituality very differently and uniquely. Like for me, spirituality is about reaching self-mastery, wisdom, and embodiment. It's an ongoing journey in maintaining my inner peace, my worthiness, my wholeness, and my heart-mind coherence. It's a process that requires a strict discipline with daily spiritual practice of meditation. And I do transcendental meditation with mantra based blessings, like setting intentions and practicing gratitude for what I have in each moment. It's about being in service for me, for the greater good. When I'll just share a little tidbit. When I went through my own awakening process, and this was like 6, 7 years ago,
Okay.
I had this realization.
That was around the time that you got the call in to write Heart of a Warrior Angel, wasn't it?
Yes, I was already deep into my awakening when that calling happened.
Good listener.
Yeah, good. Thank you for paying attention. But yeah, I had this like realization that my past narratives and conditioning that I developed as a result of my environment did not really define my true identity. We all sort of define ourselves with this narrative that we keep playing over and over again in our loop, right? So I discovered that I am more than my physical form or DNA, like more than negative thoughts or victimhood or codependent behaviors or even fears for that matter. And I was able to find my purpose and connected with this soul tribe of like-minded people who vibrate on the same frequency as I did on Instagram. And as a light worker, I had this calling to embody the light and share positive information to help uplift people around me and humanity in whatever way I connected with them. So I created this Instagram account. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Vibrations Love Light almost 3 years ago. And it was a call to action. And I call it the hashtag Revolution because I'm bringing love into the revolution.
Love it.
And using this platform, I was able to focus on giving, supporting, contributing, and assisting in this global awakening process that's been happening all around us, just to remind each person of their inherent powers, authenticity, and real wholeness. And by projecting this message of self-love and compassion, I have been so blessed with these deep spiritual connections all around the world, like borderless. These beautiful people who I've never met in person, much like yourself. Like we see each other remotely, but
it still counts though.
Yeah, we all operate from the same space of love and kindness, right? And we form these friendships and bonds that, for me, transcend space and time. So I began reading about metaphysics and the study of quantum physics and energy transmutation. I tapped into my pineal gland, which is a little gland right sort of in the middle of your forehead. It's an energy field, also known as the third eye in the New Age world. And I was able to refine my intuitive clearing techniques. And metaphysics really is a study of, it's a philosophy of existence, the study of nature, okay? And so I found this incredibly powerful, and I was able to use powerful visual imagery to stimulate and activate healing responses in others that perhaps they needed that particular message in that particular present moment. Because people reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, how did you know? I really needed to hear that today. You've made my day. And that's the most fulfilling for me. And I guess, there are different terms for this. I don't know if you've heard of empath and alchemists. I am not a fan of using labels. I just prefer to operate in the background, just with some humility and authenticity and grace. But it's just to help elevate levels of consciousness and inspire people to speak their authentic truth. I'm a huge advocate, by the way, for innocent children, women. I'm an ally to the LGBTQ2 plus community, because here we have two spirit for Indigenous. Anyone seeking their inner journey to self-realization and self-love. And I'm deeply, I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm deeply passionate about this universal call. And it's been an honor to provide the light information to help elevate the state of awareness and empowers people to remember who they really are.
That's amazing.
It's a lot, I know. It's the huge study, and I'm still on this journey, and I'm still learning and expanding, and I'm even overwhelmed sometimes because I feel so deeply and I can connect with people's emotions, and so I'm a mess. I'm an emotional wreck sometimes. I just get but it's tears of joy. It's tears of joy. So.
Well, that's okay. You're allowed to feel all the feelings. It's fine.
Exactly. It's all good things.
So see, one of the main reasons I was looking so forward to speaking with you is um, a number of years ago, I did this like I don't want to call it a test. It was an assessment of some sort, and
Hmm.
it kind of rated all the different types of the things that you're good at in terms of your well-being.
Hmm.
So like your social life, your self-esteem, self-respect, self-love, whatever you want to call it. And I scored extremely low. Like the test itself said extremely low. I scored extremely low in my spirituality well-being. And
Hmm.
I would be somebody who would describe themselves as an atheist.
Yeah.
I was raised in a religious country, in a religious home, and I kind of some people would say I drifted away from it, whereas I would say I grew out of it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So this
I
kind of
like that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So one thing I'd like to ask you is, would you consider yourself spiritual or religious? And if you could also maybe explain to me, do you see a distinction between the two or not? And
Mhm.
why?
That's a great question. And just like you, actually, I used to be an atheist too in my younger days. Just, I think it was because of my difficult childhood, but I do consider myself a spiritual person, absolutely. And that came, over time. And for me, like I said, spirituality is about practicing from the space of love and anything that's unifying. So I realized when I went through my awakening that there's just more to life than this physical matter that we perceive through our five senses, right? In this we call the third dimension of physicality. There's this deeper intelligent connection to all living things, and you could see that in plants, in animals, in our own genes, like with geometry, in the universe, even like the, in the winter on a wintry day with a snowflake. There's this life force energy that's found all around our planet and the universe. So I have discovered so much internal peace just through breath of life work. Like just doing the breathing without it being shallow, because over what it was that stat, like over 80% of people on our planet are operating from shallow breathing, and
Mm.
they are stressed and their nervous system is inflamed, and so breathing is crucial. It's crucial. And so by
Sorry to just step across you,
yeah.
just because I would agree with you, but from a totally different point of view. Um, I I used to do quite a bit of stage acting when I was younger, and
Mhm.
I would agree with you in the sense of deeper breathing, even just from a physical scientific point of view, because that always like I was trained in that so that I could project better when I was on the stage, and when you had big monologues, you needed to really master breathing properly in order to get through the lines in a natural way without going
Right.
at the end.
Right.
Whereas my other half wouldn't, and we always say the two of us are very, very opposites in some ways. Like I would say he's too highly strung, whereas he'd say I'm too laid back. And even that,
Mhm.
like I have that deep breathing. That's a habit that I formed over a lifetime from a bit of training, whereas he wouldn't.
Mhm.
So even that, I mean, I think that's one of the things I think is interesting about metaphysics, because and spirituality and stuff, because there is a physical scientific base to it. You could maybe say.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. 100%. And like I said, I've read books from Dr. Joe Dispenza that I really recommend, because the way he articulates and explains this phenomena through scientific means
Mm.
and quantum physics is incredible. And even, if we bring awareness to our breath, like even just observing it, you feel a whole, like a huge difference in the calmness that it brings with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The stillness, this alignment. And that's what I get through this art of meditation. It's really just quieting the world around me. and connecting to this inner space in between the thoughts. Because, you know, we, it took me a long time to be able to meditate 10 minutes without my mind jumping from one thought pattern to the other. Okay. So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
was a huge practice. I, you know, I was a mess. I was a mess. Um, but this particular art has transformed me from the inside out. I It's incredible. I no longer project and manifest like the frequencies and energy of victimhood or disempowerment. I used to suffer from anxiety. I don't suffer from anxiety anymore, or depression, or major physical ailments.
Mm.
I still have a little, little stuff, but it's okay. I breathe through it.
Yeah.
I'm just aware of every moment. And through gratitude, I choose how to manifest my reality. So this doesn't mean that I don't experience obstacles in life, Connor. I mean, I'm just like a regular person.
Yeah.
I am just more in control of how I choose to react to those situations, and not easily, but I eventually overcome those barriers, So to answer your second question, yes, I do see a difference between spirituality and religion.
Mm.
Um, Spirituality is about respecting every person's free will, from my perspective. And the way I understood religious beliefs, they stem from an institutionalized system of rigid
Rules.
collective attitudes, rules, opinions, and traditions. Again, this is just from my humble perspective, and I totally respect and support
Mhm.
people's practice and faith. I just
Like
have
to throw
come
out
to,
there, Lali's opinion is
yeah,
just one opinion. There's many other
yeah,
opinions out there available in your local libraries or whatever.
exactly. I respect everyone in their journey, and I honor their journey.
Mm.
I just have come to this profound understanding that each of us have this unique journey in life. Our soul, the life force within us, is very distinctive, just like our fingerprints.
Mm.
It's an aspect of the one source, the one creator of all things, like the omnipresence of all that is. And people may use the word God or the universe or the one I am. It doesn't matter the label. There is
Mm.
something that ties it all for us, and we are here, like, in this particular realm of existence, experiencing life through the most powerful energy in the universe, and that is love. In my opinion, this energy is everlasting. It cannot be destroyed, because you can't destroy energy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not just, it's not an emotion, it's a way of being. It is pure and unconditional. It is based in truth, integrity, and compassion. And through this lens, for me, there is no judgment, there's no blame, there's no shame, fear, oppression, discrimination, or suffering.
Mm.
So, from my humble point of view, any type of man made organization or dogma that preaches from this space of duality or separation is not operating from the divine energy life force of love.
Okay.
It's a consciousness, right? And in my mind, we're all equal, a loving expression of the one I am. We're just masquerading as people with human names, as one of my poems say.
um, I feel like the more we talk, the more I'm like, I don't, like, again, I said at the start, I don't
Yeah.
consider myself spiritual in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't, with respect, I wouldn't hold any stock in these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But like you were saying, the difference is I would always really respect that. Just because I don't put stock in it doesn't mean that it isn't bringing satisfaction and happiness and centeredness to other people.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I'm maybe my definition of spirituality isn't necessarily accurate, just based on what you're saying, of like, from your perspective, spirituality is about love and then generally just respecting everybody equally. which is something that I always
Exactly.
try to practice in my own life. So it's interesting because, as I said, I wouldn't be consider myself spiritual, but the more you talk, the more I'm like, wait, maybe I am. Oh, hang on, this is
And
weird.
to be honest, it's a very unique perspective. Everyone
Mm.
operates from their own perspective. Do you know what I mean? So there's no
We're all
right
the
or
only
wrong.
we are all the only people in our own heads. So like
Exactly.
everything is filtered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, to me, there's no right or wrong way of defining spirituality. It's how you choose to act and from which space you're acting from.
Mm.
And that's why, for me, like, I easily connect with people like yourself from the energy that you exude and you emit. And that's coming from a heart space. That is spiritual to me. And
Yeah.
listen, it doesn't mean we're not working on ourselves and we don't have issues. And we this is what life is all about. It's a journey, and it happens the way it's meant to happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. I'd like to move on to something now that you kind of touched on a bit. Um, if you feel comfortable talking about it, and if you don't, it's absolutely fine, and I totally respect that. Um, you kind of mentioned that you had your own troubles and stuff, and that there was that you had your own awakening
Mhm.
6 or 7 years ago. You mentioned, and I'm just wondering what was Lali before that awakening like? Like what? Because you seem like I mean, you have said that you still have issues and everyone still
Yeah,
works through them, but you do seem like
absolutely.
such a joyful, light person. And by light, I don't mean like spiritual light. I mean you don't seem burdened and you don't seem like there's stuff going on all the time in your head. So what was the Lali like before that awakening? Was there something that was going on that you had to kind of get through to get to the Lali you are today?
Yes, absolutely. That it was a lot of work to get to where I am today. And um, the, my way of life before, I was still a very kind and joyful person, but I put everyone else ahead of myself. And
Mm,
so as a result, I neglected myself. And that's where my self love and self realization comes from, because the ultimate test of love starts with us, right? But that was the way I was brought up. That was my conditioning. Sacrifice yourself for someone else's um, well being.
yeah.
And that is the opposite of what I've realized we should be teaching our children.
Mm,
And, I've had, as a result, um, many different breakdowns. And it's also almost like my physical body was shutting down from the stresses of it all. I juggled so many things. I thought I was superwoman. I was like career oriented, and I had to be, I had the family, and I was very, very involved with my kids and managed, their ringette teams and soccer or football for you, football teams,
yeah.
and working full time, and, being the perfect wife and mother and daughter and friend. And I just burnt out. And I even went back to school and tried to take my master's a year and a half after. My body shut down and I couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
I lost 20 pounds in 1 week.
Oh
That's how much
wow.
energy it took for me just to get to the bathroom. So something was wrong. There was something, right, that I
Obviously.
had to change. And so, there have been, other occasions that I think it's best to keep to myself because it's a little bit more paranormal. I don't want to scare your audience, but I have always been a very private person.
That's
And
fine. It's fair.
yeah, and my life's journey growing up has not been an easy one. But true enlightenment is a difficult process. It's not, that you do something once and voila, magically it appears. It's a journey that forces us to really look within and face our shadows, our demons, the unpleasant feelings we try to avoid, or the fears that we hide away from, our unworthiness, like,
Mm,
our ability that we want to be heard, we want to be loved, we want to be recognized. We were always looking externally for that. And that's the way we've been trained, when really it's within us.
Mm.
And it's the only way in my mind we can liberate ourselves. And that's what I've done for myself, is relinquishing the control of those conditioned behaviors and patterns.
Yeah.
And that's where, um, spirituality comes in for me. And I've channeled these spiritual insights through my writing and storytelling. Although the novels are a work of fiction, I totally use my understanding and experiences to provide the gripping, emotional, and thought-provoking books for my readers.
Yeah.
In both of my novels, Heart of a Warrior Angel and Decoding of Joe, I have included aspects of some of my experiences in as the visionary fantasy, and the narrations of energy transmissions that I write about overcoming darkness using esoteric practices
Mm.
have been integrated into my prose and world building for the Ascending Angel trilogy.
And I think that's really important to note, though, because I don't think there's a single author out there, whether they admit to it or not, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a part of themselves in their book. I mean, as I said earlier, we are the only people in our own heads. So like, there's no way that you can write a book and not have a worldview in there, or not have
Yeah.
an aspect of your spirituality, in your case, in your books, or the kind of messages you want to get out into the
Yeah.
world.
And my experiences. And,
Yeah, yeah,
like Margaret Atwood and Stephen King, they all say you need to write what you know,
yeah.
right? And that's where the authenticity of your writer voice comes through.
Mm.
And every day I'm honing my writing practice, and hopefully I'm improving it, because I didn't go to school for writing.
Yeah.
So this is just it's coming to me naturally, and I'm hopefully improving the process. But at the end of the day, I've come to appreciate every experience, whether it was bad or good, in my life, as blessings and
Yeah.
as lessons. There were opportunities for me to evolve my higher self. And through my suffering and awakening, I am able to better relate emotionally with so many warrior queens and kings, who are survivors of many different types of backgrounds. So I'm so grateful that it has brought me to this now moment, speaking and connecting with you, my kind friend. I would not be here today if I didn't go through all those experiences, right?
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, there's a famous, I don't know if it's famous, it's just something I see a lot on like social media and the internet and things, but that you've survived 100% of your bad days. And
Yes.
it's just
Yes.
about, like, listen, you're gonna have a bad day, but I mean,
Exactly.
even when and sometimes that can be so hard when you're having a lot of bad days, one after the other. I mean, we've all
It
been
is.
there in different ways.
And the thing is, you don't want to dismiss that. You want to
Exactly.
acknowledge those emotions and
Exactly, yeah.
feelings, and you want to, like for me, what I do is I feel them. I let my body feel whatever it is. If it's sadness, if it's even, the unworthiness is still within me that I'm still trying to process.
Mm.
And then you process it, you give it that respect, and then you don't dwell in it though. That's the
Yeah.
thing for me. I don't allow it to control my reality. So I process it, I feel it, I integrate it, and I learn from it. There's a message
Yeah.
for me. Like, so whatever triggers us, from my perspective, it's an opportunity to heal ourselves. Right?
Yes.
So
For
that's the
some
way I
people,
view
and
it.
then there's other people that, I mean, even the word trigger, there's other people that some triggers are just too difficult to overcome. So what they have to do is they have to navigate their life in such a way that they can avoid as many of those triggers as possible. So it's kind of like, it's like what you were saying earlier about everyone's spirituality and journey through life is so unique. It's a fingerprint. So for you,
Exactly.
you're capable, and you've learned enough about yourself and about the way you view the world, to take those triggers on and to kind of process them or whatever. Whereas other people, the best thing for them would be to completely avoid them. So it's just, it shows how I suppose the thing is we both kind of said about how
Yeah,
religion is very rule driven and it's very one size fits all. Some religions, not all. So it kind of shows that maybe it is better to be more flexible and let people experience their life their own way.
absolutely. And that's what I mean. Our journeys
Yeah,
are our own, and there's no prescribed method to it.
yeah,
For me, I was just lucky to find the tools that I needed to deal with those, bad days, right?
yeah.
To deal with the anxiety, and that helped me. There's practices, there's tools. It's just about having an open mind and maybe, looking and discovering and learning new things. And doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just bringing a level of awareness to it. And
Exactly.
that for me has been very helpful.
Mm. I'd love to talk a little bit about your writing now, if that's okay.
Of course. Of course.
Because that's one of the main reasons I called this podcast "Story of a Storyteller," because it's mostly about about the author. That's who you learn from as another author, and that's who readers are very interested in learning about. Because
Mhm.
usually the author is this mysterious figure that sometimes isn't even a picture in the back of the book; it's just a name on the spine or an idea.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's a very good, I think, marketing tactic. Having that aura of mystery. Increase that curiosity, right? In the
yes,
reader.
yes, yes. And it's a good marketing tactic on my point for the podcast because now everyone's like, "Ooh, they did a podcast. Let's check it out."
Exactly.
So, Career, could you tell us a little bit about your first book in particular? Because that seems to have a special place in your heart in terms of it was kind of very close to what you've called your awakening or your
Mhm.
reawakening, sorry. So, Heart of a Warrior Angel from Darkness to Light. Can you tell me a little bit about
Yes.
give us the blurb, we'd say, and then we'll discuss why you wrote it.
Oh, yes. Writing Heart of a Warrior Angel as my debut novel was an extremely passionate process for me, as we spoke earlier. Um, I wanted to relay an emotional, inspirational, and character-driven narrative that not only embodied the visionary fantasy aspect of it, but also it's about an incarnated angel's journey on Earth that sought to humanize the protagonist's experiences, but done with respect because of the subject matter. My objective was to shine the light on the sensitive subject matters of childhood abuse and trauma that
Mm-hmm.
most shy away from because it's not an
Yeah.
easy read, and to present it with grace. I did not wish to muddle the intention with dialogue. And it was a bit risky for me, but
Yeah.
writing each point of view in an omniscient, limited perspective, the reader can resonate with each character. And also, for me, it may serve as a catalyst for changing conversations about childhood abuse and perhaps removing that stigma of shame that lies
Mm.
behind that. Um, so, in my business career, I have had the pleasure of working with many brave men and women warriors that have shared their stories with me of their childhood violence. And
Okay.
Conor, I was astounded to discover how many innocent people suffer due to the generational cycle of alcoholism or domestic abuse violence. This includes like childhood wounding as a result of neglect or abuse, loss, codependency.
Wow.
And in Canada, we had this unspoken history about the treatment of our Indigenous people in the
Mm.
residential school system that was just wrought with shame and ignorance.
Could I
And
just ask something just for
yeah,
clarification there?
absolutely.
Residential school system, how is that different to like what was that just what you call your local public schools or are they like
No.
boarding schools or
So, yes, in the early 1900s, Canada, I guess our government decided to try to integrate the Indigenous culture with the English culture, and they physically removed young children from ages 4 and 5 and up
Wow.
from their families and put them in this institution. There's residential schools that were run by different religious institutions. And they had experienced so much. Ugh, I get emotional just thinking about this. I'm sorry.
No,
So
no.
much emotional, physical, sexual abuse at the hands of these people.
Organizations, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so,
Wasn't aware of that.
yes, and that was the part where we needed to educate and, bring, like I said, bring this part of our history to light so that we don't ever, um, you know, go through this again, right? So by raising awareness through different education processes and accountability with empathy and compassion, where we were able to move forward with our Indigenous people with open communication, inclusivity, and we could start the healing process for reconciliation. So I was one of the very fortunate to be involved in that particular project.
Right.
And I traveled all over the world. Oh, sorry, not the world, the country, in these
To be fair,
residential
Canada's so
schools.
big.
It is so
Yeah.
big.
It's kind of a world of its own.
Yeah. And, all I could do is just sit with people who were men and women in their, 50s and 60s who just wanted to share their story with me. And they would just cry and then just hold their hand and listen to them. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it was quite emotional. And so this inspired me to raise awareness on childhood abuse even more through the characters and share some of my own philosophical insights into energy healing.
Mm.
Through the use of metaphysics and energy transmutation, the main character in Heart of a Warrior Angel, Lilac Noble, was able to expose the evil out of the shadows and bring truth into the light with self-love, vulnerability, and acceptance, and to live in freedom, peace, and harmony with the universe and the people around her. So in the story, Lilac had to undergo this destructive process of enlightenment to come to the realization that everything consists of energy, including her thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and actions. I provide a detailed narrative on the tools and practices that the protagonists use to shift their focus and attitude to what I call vibrate higher, like from the heart energy. Okay.
Mm.
And through the use of law of attraction, I'm sure you've heard of that, law of attraction or law of vibration, Lilac discovers her inner power to manifest her perceived reality. So I use this ideology, which stems from the philosophy that our consciousness is the ultimate basis of our being that creates our reality. So, how our minds are programmed results in the experience of our bodies, our perceptions, and ultimately our daily lives.
Mm.
When we elevate our state of awareness, we reinvent and transform our state of consciousness. And this influences how we think and how we emotionally react to things, how we perceive the world around us, even how we connect with our own loved ones. And to me, because of this philosophy, it helps us achieve more nurturing, loving communities with compassion and social interactions, right?
Yeah.
So I feel very humbled to be able to tell this heart-wrenching tale
Mm.
that reflects the realities of some of these survivors that I have met from various forms of violence, almost giving them a voice through my characters. And I was able to use my knowledge and research of the philosophy, linking concepts of reality, as well as the relationship between mind, matter, and spiritual consciousness into this visionary self-actualization storyline. And
Brilliant.
I think it provides a thought-provoking alternative to an entertaining thriller.
Yeah. And, I think that's the thing that it can be very hard to write a book with such a, first of all, I don't want to say controversial, such an emotive
Yes,
kind of theme. And
yes,
whether somebody has suffered any kind of abuse, either childhood or otherwise,
Yeah.
or not, every human has an emotive response to childhood abuse.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so interesting about your first book, is that it is something that everyone's going to have an emotional response to when they hear what it's about, positive or negative or whatever. Like some people will want
Exactly.
to, some people will definitely, I can imagine, I'm sure you'd agree, won't touch your book at all
Oh yeah.
because it'll probably be too, as we were
Too
discussing earlier,
much.
too much or too
Yep.
triggering for them. Whereas then
Yep.
other people will be like, oh, I need to know more. So it's really interesting that even just by choosing the topic that you did, you've created, I don't want to say controversial, but I think emotive is the only word that's come into mind, an emotive book.
It is, and it's not for everyone. Not everyone
No,
resonates
no.
with the story, and that's okay. I just, like I said, I had this call to write it and
Yeah.
share it with the world. And I've had such an incredible feedback, and not like I said, I have some 2-star ratings. um,
We all
but
have those.
you know what I mean? But most of the people that have responded were like incredibly grateful, because some of the things people have said to me was that they did not know how to articulate their experience,
Mm,
and this put it in perspective for them so they could
wow.
now
Okay.
start the journey to healing. And that is, I mean, that was my entire intention. If it helps even one person, I'm a happy, happy, happy Lali.
But that's what we all want. We all want to have a happy
Right?
lally in our hands.
Yes, always happy.
Always happy. Um, could we then maybe just talk about um like, because there's one thing, even just from a purely from a craft point of view, we'll just
Hmm.
with respect, we'll just set this spirituality element to the side. What was
Yeah,
it that what was it about that book that made you, because you said it earlier, that you didn't want to muddle it with dialogue?
yeah,
And I've my writing would be very different to yours. I'm often trying to get less dialogue because I write so much, then I'm trying to kind of put in more description. So we obviously, that to write a book with no dialogue to me sounds impossible. So what was it that made you make that conscious decision to avoid dialogue?
honestly, Connor, it's just the way it flowed for me. I'm just such
Okay.
a natural narrator. And I actually struggle with dialogue, to be honest with you. That's one of
Really?
the
Okay.
things, yes, like in Decoding of Joe, I try to really improve that aspect of my writing. But for this particular subject line, I just found that it does the story and the characters more justice, because the reader is then taken on this emotional roller coaster, for for each character. They know
Mm.
exactly, even the antagonist, they know exactly what they are feeling and thinking. And what I wanted to do was provide a holistic view without judgment, even
Mm.
though this is about, you know, childhood abuse, stemming from Lilac's father, because your parents are supposed to be the people that protect you, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's the most atrocity and oppressed situation you can think of, it's still done with compassion for the antagonist, because at the end of the day, they are only behaving from the perspective that they have been raised, like in terms of their
Yeah.
environment and their conditioning.
Like I
And
said,
not
everyone's only in their own
exactly,
head. Yeah.
right? So it was a way of um, relaying that compassionate lens on the antagonists, and removing, that notion of blame. And I'm not saying, again, what's right and isn't wrong. It's just an understanding of the human mind for this particular storyline.
Very. It's very interesting. It's very interesting way to look at dialogue in that way. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have before. Like I personally, I would have said dialogue is the best way I can get my characters across when I'm writing about them. But maybe that's just the that's just the type of writer I am versus the type of writer you are. And as we've been saying, there is no right or wrong. It's
Right.
just
And we all have our
everyone's
unique,
personal style.
yeah, we all have our unique writer voice, and that's what it is.
Exactly.
And again, I just think I did it in a way that felt more comfortable for me and more natural, because I mean, I cried so much writing this story because it's
Oh
very
God.
difficult. It was very difficult. Some of the, details that I relay in this was not easy, and it did bring me back to a very dark place. But that was okay, because it also helped me heal my own issues, and it was a huge, um, I guess, realization for me in my awakening process. So we all have darkness, right? We all,
Yeah.
like you said, from a childhood, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be extreme. It could be something little, but we have to, in my mind, acknowledge that. And that's the only way that I was able to free myself from the control the past had over me. Because the
Mm.
past is a past, it's over, right?
Yeah.
So in each moment, we have a choice to make on how we want to move forward.
Mm.
And the major theme behind Heart of a Warrior Angel was the power of forgiveness. And that, to me, is the most beautiful story, because no matter what happened to Lilac, she was able to find the salvation within her and even release, the darkness from her own family to help with their healing.
Brilliant.
So,
It's
yeah.
it's such I don't know what to say. It's just, it sounds like it's such a difficult thing to write and do, but it sounds like you're
Oh,
very happy with how it came out. And congrats on being happy with your finished product, because lots of writers
thank
aren't.
you. That I,
Uh,
you know, I mean, listen, it's not the perfect book for sure. If I could go back, I'd probably make some adjustments. But the
but
fact
wouldn't we
that,
all with every book, though? I
right?
mean,
Yeah.
a book's
But the
never
fact,
finished.
no, and oh my goodness, the editing process took me forever. It's my least favorite. It's my least favorite. But the fact that, I finished it and published it, and it's been accepted so greatly. I mean, to me, it's the most fulfilling thing. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. And so this is an Ascending Angel trilogy, right? So
Yeah.
Decoding of Joe is actually Lilac's youngest daughter. And she
Okay.
has to go through her own reawakening, or awakening and realization of what her purpose and mission in life is as an ascending angel.
Brilliant. Can I
Mm-hmm.
ask?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know we're both running out of time, and I feel like I'm not getting to ask any of these questions, but it's fine because it's such a great interview so far anyway. So I know that you're currently preparing to pitch Heart of a Warrior Angel for an adaptation to the big screen, whether it be big or small. I'm not sure. So how are you preparing for that?
Well, I think I've been kind of preparing for this for the last year, because this was honestly such a cool and exciting moment for me as a self-published author. In the fall of 2019, I
Mhm.
entered my debut novel in this contest to be featured on display at the famous New York Book Exposition. I don't know
Okay.
if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I have.
And yes, and it was picked up, and I was like so excited. It was picked up to be showcased in one of the Visionary Fantasy booths that was supposed to be held this April 2020. And the title was included in this newsletter that I had no idea about this, but this newsletter that was sent to all the industry professionals across the United States.
Hmm.
So this was done in the background. I had no clue. A few weeks
Okay.
later, yeah, a few weeks later, I was approached by this media group that found my story really intriguing, different, and original in its narration and storytelling. And after much negotiation by my lawyer, it was picked up for a screenplay development. And it was supposed to be pitched to Hollywood directors and filmmakers in May of this year of 2020.
Okay.
And there was some media frenzy around me at the time. And I was just like pinching myself, like, is this really happening? I don't know what's going on. Like, is this real? But unfortunately,
Pandemic.
COVID, yes, the pandemic hit and the lockdown delayed my New York Book Expo feature as well as the screen adaptation. I actually just found out a month ago that the Book Expo is no longer happening and it's been retired indefinitely,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately. But I'm still hoping that the screenplay pitch will take place. It's this spring, May 2021. And honestly, Connor, I'm of the mindset that if it's meant to be, it will be. And no matter what the outcome, it's just been such an exciting experience for me, just even to have, that opportunity.
Yeah. And I suppose whether or not this group of people go forward with it, you now know that there is interest in doing that. So you could probably
Yeah,
find a screenwriter to work with or even do the screenplay yourself and then kind of develop it from there. Like so
perhaps.
it's a really exciting
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
We'll see. Exactly. I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, in my mind, I know exactly who I want to play Lilac and Joe. So
Oh, okay. You'll have to tell me when we stop recording.
yes, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to start wrapping up now.
Yes.
I have a little group of questions I always ask at the end of every interview. So when we're finished, you've told me who's going to play who, and we've said our goodbyes. What's the first thing you're going to do when we're finished the interview today?
I think the first thing I'm going to do is probably go to the ladies' room. TMI, TMI.
No, it's fine.
And and then I'll probably go for a little bit of a walk. I always try to ground myself with nature. It's winter wonderland here today
Mm,
in Ottawa, the capital city of Canada. It's beautiful, but I won't last very long.
okay.
I just want to get some, movement, get the blood pumping, and then I think I will probably meditate for 20 minutes, make some dinner for the family, answer, of course, my Twitter notifications in between it all. I don't
Of
take my
course.
phone on my walk though, because
That's good.
yes, absolutely. And then I'm hoping to finish writing chapter 5 of the next series in the Decoding of Joe.
Brilliant. God, you've
Yeah,
loads on today.
I have lots. Yes, it's only 2:30 our time here. We're good. We got
Yeah, you
lots of
see,
time.
that's time zones still. I still can't wrap my head around them. I'm going, no, I mean, it's nearly 8 o'clock. This is bizarre. Like, no, it's not. It's not 8 o'clock for you.
Isn't
Um,
that fascinating? We could
I
be in
find it
two
so amusing.
different places. Yeah.
I interviewed a different Canadian on
Hmm.
this season, Joshua Gillingham, and he lives on the east coast of Canada. And it was really interesting
Oh,
because
yes.
when we started, he was sitting at a window, and when we started, it was bright outside my window, and it was dark behind him. And when we
Mm,
finished, it was dark outside my window and it was bright at his window. And it really just
that's incredible.
it just blew my mind because I was there going, wow, we really are on opposite sides of the world.
And that's the best part about social media is the
Yeah,
connection we can make to each other no matter where we are. I love
exactly.
that. I love that.
Lali, will you just tell anyone watching or listening where they can find you and your books and all that kind of stuff on the internet?
Absolutely. I can be found in many places on the internet if you just search me by my pen name, Lali A. Love. But the best, I think, online platform is my website, www.authorlalialove.com. And there you can find all my links to my social media sites, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, Ridsy, YouTube, you name it. It's all there,
It's
all in one
all
place.
there. It's all there. And of course, all those links will, as always, be in the YouTube description and in the show notes of whatever podcast app you're using. And
Yeah.
finally, Lali, my last question, and it's always my last question, it's always my favorite one, is what was the last book you read?
My goodness, I have read so many incredible books in support of indie writers in the writing community over the last year. I actually exceeded my Goodreads goal.
Goal. Oh, very good.
Yeah, but honestly, Connor, I struggle with keeping up with my enormous TBR lists and my downloads on Kindle, just like everyone, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, I'm, juggling work and writing and all my promotion. And I also try to continue expanding my knowledge of esoteric wisdom and mysticism. So I'm right now I'm reading Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
Okay.
It's really cool. He lived as a monk. He provides tools for training our minds for peace and purpose every day. But however, the last book I devoured was the Rift Cycle series, Echoes of Blood, by the incredibly talented Halo Scott.
Yeah.
She is phenomenal.
She's getting mentioned in every season, and I must Halo, I know you're watching. I want commission because you're actually the second guest on this season to say that that's the last book you read. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, she's a phenomenal writer, storyteller, and an overall human. I love her dearly. And you can actually find my book reviews featured in my monthly newsletter if you sign up and subscribe on my website. I like to give shout outs to all the amazing creatives in our writing community. And there's such an incredible depth and pool of talent. I think you all deserve to be on the New York bestseller list, honestly. Traditional writers, move over.
Yeah, the indies are taking over.
That's right.
Lali, thank you so much for doing this. It has been a fascinating and, I'll be honest, educating interview. And it's great to actually, because we've interacted so much on and off online, so it's nice to actually talk to you and get to know you. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh my goodness, Conor, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I so appreciate you, and I support your great podcast. I can only send you love and blessings for a new year filled with more inspiration, fulfillment, and obviously joy, because joy and hope is what makes the world go round. Until our next Twitter combo.
Until then, thanks so much.